Welcome to Incessantly Seeking, where we discuss the pursuits that drive our lives with a new guest every Friday. I'm your host, Luciana Fauhaber, and today we're discussing the pursuit of visibility. Hello and welcome to another episode of Incessantly Seeking. We're here today with Mark Horvarth. Did I say it right?
You did.
Good. I was practicing right before we start recording, so that makes me feel very happy. And we're here today to discuss the pursuit of visibility. Mark runs Invisible People that set out to reset standards and perceptions around homelessness in America. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor.
You have a very small task to accomplish.
Sometimes it's so insurmountable, you just want to quit, and it seems to be getting worse and harder, where it shouldn't be. But we have to take care of our neighbors, housed or unhoused. It's the only way we're going to make our world a better place.
That is very true. And, we discuss this over and over again. What is the number one reason of homelessness? And it's the high cost of affordable, in this case, unaffordable housing.
Yeah, I was in a conversation this morning. When I mean conversation is I often respond to very judgmental people on YouTube, and a person was commenting how it's this homeless person's choice that they do drugs. And this person was first in child protective services when they're 7 years old, taken away from their mother. When the father got out of prison, when the kid was 10 years old, the kid went and lived with his father. His father then introduced him to marijuana and pornography. And at 10 years old, it was the first time this kid, 10 years old, got arrested in school for marijuana. Now, today, marijuana is legal. It's not like it was years ago, but a 10-year-old kid. And that just went into a life that snowballed into living on the streets. And I responded to this person because it's called individualism, that they want to blame the homeless on the individual. I'm like, the only choice in homelessness is if we are going to do something to help people. Because, it's lack of affordable housing, lack of a living wage, broken foster care, broken criminal justice system, domestic violence, addiction, mental health, and you can keep on going and going and going. And yeah, I mean, if homelessness was a punishment for bad choices, we'd all be homeless. And really, the bottom line is the biggest choice in homelessness is if we're going to do something to help our homeless neighbors.
Exactly. And I would love to hear how this work started for you.
I would love to say that, I went to a high school auditorium session where they, career day, become a nonprofit executive. But it wasn't that way for me. Many years ago, I had a great job in television syndication, and I ended up homeless on Hollywood Boulevard. I rebuilt my life back to a 3-bedroom house and cushy marketing job and a new car, and the economy tanked in 2008. Very similar to what's going on with the pandemic. I mean, the economy tanked. We just didn't have the virus, right? And I lost everything again, except my sobriety. So right around 19 months of unemployment, not consecutive, I would get a job, get laid off, get a job. It was a really dark time. I mean, my house was going into foreclosure, and I wanted to work, but there was no work for me back then. And I tried McDonald's. I tried Home Depot. I actually even got a job at Macy's for 10 days. And it was a really, really tough time. And I grabbed the camera and I went out and I started interviewing homeless people. And I want to tell you that, uh, the goal was to make our world a better place. But the truth is, I was giving myself a reason to get up in the morning. And it's really taken off. So here it is 13 years later. It took us a while to get here, but we have a YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. We do daily news on Apple News, Google News, and our website, often written by people with lived experience of homelessness. And we do mini documentaries. We still do the first person interviews. And drum roll, please. Thanks to this wonderful director and actor that I met named Luciana, we now do scripted films.
That's right. And it's been quite the journey as we see the reaction of everyone and how it really is causing an impact to maybe a part of the same audience, but also inviting in a new audience that can, really be present for these tough issues. Because I feel like a lot of people, when they look for a film or for some kind of a TV, they want to have a type of escapism. They want to sit back and pretend everything is fine in the world. So, it's been so rewarding and so realizing to see that people are responding positively to films that are really reflecting the reality of what we're seeing in life and on the streets.
What we're doing, the last movie, you can see all of Luciana's films on homelessness by going to invisiblepeople.tv/films. The last movie, Mobile, is now, I think, 405,000 views in 6 months, which is really good. But it's disrupting the traditional, at least the cause film model. So usually a film is released about homelessness, and it's played in auditoriums and churches and gymnasiums. If you're lucky, it's played in a theater. Maybe later on, it'll get on Amazon or Netflix. And, only people that have an affinity for homelessness, meaning they already work in social services sector or they volunteer, will go watch that. But what we're doing in the comfort of a person, see, it's really, most of us consume YouTube on our phone.
Right.
And it's safe. I understand not everybody's going to walk down Skid Row with me. But, you see homeless people and you'll say, gosh, I'm a little bit scared. I don't want to go talk to them. It's understandable. But I want to know their story. Well, in the safety of consuming video on your laptop at Starbucks or on your phone or wherever it is that you consume video, you feel comfortable and you're more open to receiving these stories.
Right. And there's also a sense of proximity to reality, but it's still in the scripted form. It gives you a sense that this is a story. And that's what we really were hoping for, is that giving this little bit of distance between film and real life, that people will engage more and will be more present, to receive those stories.
There's a Netflix documentary that's nominated for an Oscar this year, and the cinematography on it is gorgeous. And as a person that works in homelessness, I'm blown away that a film on homelessness is going to get that much attention. I got a real good point here. You're going to love this. But if you watch the film, and the cinematography is great, there's no story. It doesn't connect. So those of us in the social services sector are like, oh gosh, this is what we want people to see. I love this. However, a person that doesn't have the affinity for homelessness is never going to sit and watch this movie to the end. I went to lunch yesterday with somebody who was involved with that film, and we were talking about what I just said. And the person turned to me and said, that's why I like your film, Mobile. It made me cry.
Oh, that's so lovely.
And they were part of this Netflix documentary that got nominated. And that's what the difference is, you know. And, you know, I'm not being, you know, Netflix is the big guy on the block, right? And I think it's great that a film or any of their films gets attention. I'm not being critical here. I'm just saying if you're going to educate the public on homelessness, it has to be a story that people are going to watch in a format and a place where they feel safe to watch.
And it's also not so long. I feel like the advantage of what we're doing in these little snippets of stories that are so specific in content and purpose is that it's 15, 15 minutes, 16 minutes. So we're not sitting through a 2 hour movie that maybe we don't, sometimes don't have the time, or really, like you said, like just don't feel like we can engage, especially in an age right now where now we may be facing another world war. I mean, things are just so crazy right now, and it's really hard to get people to really look at what is happening at home and like how can we make a difference at home. And that's what we're trying to do here, is maybe demystify what living on the streets is like to a more realistic perception. And now we're working on this film about eviction, and during the research process I come to learn that eviction is a very complicated process. It's incredibly bureaucratic, and there's so much about it that I'm continuously researching and trying to understand to do its justice. Not that every eviction case is different. As Mark said, a lot of people who start on the street as children end up getting back on the streets as adults. It is a cyclical issue. And it's so bureaucratic, not just per state, but in a federal sense. So as we're creating this story too, we're looking at what are the pillars, what are the most common events that happen in this eviction process.
It is an honor to work with you, and it's so very grateful. I'm so very grateful because, and to all your friends, we're currently crowdfunding. I don't know when this podcast is going to go live.
Next week, so
Next week. So we're currently crowdfunding to make this film a reality. And even the total amount, it's so tiny compared to a traditional film budget, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, often millions and millions of dollars. So it's a huge credit to you and your friends that you can produce such quality stories on a limited budget. And I believe someday we'll have a bigger budget, and it's going to be mind blowing what we'll be able to do. But until then, I'm so very grateful for all the people that support the films that we're making, and this is something that we're hoping that we'll be able to continue to do. And it's exactly what you said. What I believe is so important. I'm a big believer. We burst our bladders binge watching Netflix these days, right? So long form has a place. Short form has a place too. But when you're talking about hard subjects like homelessness, eviction, living in your car, you're bringing people through some tough emotions, and it's hard. People got to sit there and feel these emotions. And often, if you're doing an hour of this, they detach. They're just gonna, gosh, my heart's broken. I'm gonna stop. But if you do it in a short period of time, it's more received in a way that actually changes their paradigms. I mean, there's two huge pieces of feedback from the film you made on mobile. And first, that I really thought was just amazing. I mean, I hate that there are so many people that are sleeping in their car, but so many homeless people or formerly homeless, especially women, commented, "This is real. this is what it's like. Thank you for producing this movie. And then there were others that were saying, oh my gosh, I feel for this woman. I'm understanding now what it must be like to lose your home and only have your car. So those two responses, and there were a lot of both, are really that's the nuggets that keep me going.
And it's amazing how powerful feelings are, right? And with these, like the concern for me and the team and everybody involved is that the people watching it, the audience, can feel what it's like to be in someone else's shoe who is going through that process. But at the same time, like you said, feeling can be very hindering, because I think we spend a lot of time in our lives avoiding our feelings because we don't want to get hurt. We don't want to go through that experience. I mean, who hasn't driven past a light, on your car and seen a homeless person and looked away because it felt uncomfortable, because they felt bad and they didn't know what to do. And we discussed that a lot about recognition and looking somebody in the eye and making them feel seen, even if you don't have that money or you don't have food in your car, whatever it is. And that's the same for these projects. Is like, you have to really, whatever time you have, to sit through them and look them in the eye. You got to look those issues in the eye. And I think as a human society, we do that a lot. See people doing that with now this potential new war. People are either binge watching that and panicking, or, oh, I don't want to see it, and shutting off and not looking at the news. So it's like, how do you find that balance, right? How do you find the balance between, here is the truth of what's happening, but yet use it with grace and tactile, about how to tell that story in a way that it's digestible. Yeah. Not that we are sugarcoating anything at all whatsoever. I'm completely against that. But I also feel like these are real life stories of people, and they deserve a lot of dignity in the way they're being told.
And speaking of truth, NPR just came out with some research and reporting that here in Los Angeles, even with the eviction protections, rents went up 19%. In Austin, Texas, 40%. In Orlando, 30%. And you can pick anywhere in the country, big or small, urban or rural, and cost of housing is going up. What's not going up is people's income. And, wages have remained stagnant for years while housing is going up. It's projected, because of the affordable housing crisis. If you live in Los Angeles, I only know the data from Los Angeles. I'm sure it's similar to other communities, but in Los Angeles, it's projected that homelessness will increase 49% in the next 4 years. And the problem is affordable housing. Here in Los Angeles, there's 200,000 vacant units. It's not there's a housing stock issue. The homeless count says there's, in the city of Los Angeles, 44,000, in Los Angeles County, 60,000. It's more than that. But the bottom line is there's enough empty units that we could house everybody over 2 times. And if you drive around any city, you see the cranes. There's luxury condos being built. I mean, one thing that we're really good at is building these luxury condos. They're going up almost overnight, and there seems to be no stop to them. What isn't happening is affordable housing. Affordable housing is not being created, and that is a crisis. So we have to do 2 things, and it's why this film is so important. Is we first have to prevent eviction. We have to, make sure that people who are at risk of losing their home and going outside have the ability to stay in their home. There's research that, once they are out on the streets and enter the shelter system, especially kids, it all goes downhill, and often they end up with worse problems. So if we're able to keep them in their apartments or their homes until they can restabilize, hopefully get a better paying job, it's beneficial to everybody. And the other is we need to create affordable housing. There's just it is really scary what's happening out there.
And I'm always fascinated when I drive past these tall, high-rise buildings, thinking, who is moving into these buildings? They have started in Los Angeles, as we've been here for years, and those units remain empty by majority. And now there's new buildings going up, and those continue to be empty. And I keep thinking, who are these people who are moving to
Yeah.
LA and who want to live in a studio for $2,500? And when I lived in New York, those are some realistic issues. Like New York City, like San Francisco, is known to be like the highest rents in the country. And now I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm thinking, this is not a Wall Street town. Like, people are not making that kind of money here, to have a one bedroom for $3,000. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, the developers are making money building it. Whether they're going to be leased or not is,
A whole nother
doesn't
issue.
really be, it really doesn't matter. But it's, I come from a small town, upstate New York, and it's a town of 40,000 people. And because the town is really a college town, all industry left except the college, and the college and healthcare are the two main industries. And parents are able to pay more to put their kids in this college, and it's driving up rents in a 40,000 people town. It's driving up rents to almost LA rents,
Wow.
right? One bedrooms are going for $1,500, going up to $2,000 in a small, tiny town where there's only minimum wage jobs. So it's not just a Los Angeles issue.
Absolutely. And that's what we're trying to do with these films, is show that this is really a national problem. So the stories travel from place to place. The next one, Eviction, we're shooting in Las Vegas, which is the fifth highest incidence of eviction in the country right now. It's just been insane that it's such a rich town with so much excess of luxury, and there are so many people suffering in the homeless sector. And we also talked about in this film Eviction how the process of eviction is intrinsically very prejudicial, to people of color, to single mothers, and discussing the issue of children. What I've come to learn through the research of this process for this film is that the children in the eviction process are invisible. We live in a country where a lot of states you can't have an abortion because these people are considered people. Your fetus, your unborn child is considered a person. But then once you are in a system like an eviction system, your child is no longer considered a person, which I find mind blowing, which is really the intrinsic issue of this country of you can't tell me what to do with my body because of this perception that this, even though science says otherwise, this fetus, this person is a person. But the moment that it is a person and it's out in the world and it needs our help, the whole government system completely ignores it and completely sees it as not a person who does not need their own individual needs and wants and developmental issues taken care of. Now, it's interesting because I used to be a teacher. So looking through the system on, kids who are homeless, the government does say that they deserve to stay in school and they will pick them up anywhere, that they are, to at least maintain them in the same school. The problem is a lot of parents don't want to declare themselves to be homeless because they feel that that's the reason to have their kids taken away from them. And what I have learned through this educational process of making this film is that, homelessness is not reason to have your kids taken from you. That is not neglect. And a lot of parents don't know that. And it's terrifying.
Yeah. One thing, I have worked in homeless services. I was formerly homeless. I've worked in homeless services, and we work. Let me put it this way: it's just important to keep parents and kids together. And most will restabilize quickly, and that's what we need to do, and that's what's the importance of this film, because we have to, again, make sure people are, we work on preventing homelessness, and if something happens that a family does end up without housing, we need to get them in housing as quickly as possible.
And it's what you mentioned before, that I have learned as well through this process of research is that how cyclical this process really is. And kids who are, raised on the streets end up later in their lives with their own kids on the streets. And even though they are trying, and I really need to emphasize this, there's so many great people out there really trying to change their lives and really doing everything they can, but the system does not help. There are issues in which people have qualified, they make too much money and a minimum wage job to qualify for government housing. So you're faced with that, issue. Should I quit my job so I can have a place to live, or do I quit? So it's just so mind blowing to me when you start to realize how contradicting the system on its own really is. So how can you break through that barrier? There's this consistent, not just a stigma, but also these barriers that are supposedly put in place to help people are really hindering people, and how to navigate that. And we have the issue of education, right? I mean, I'm a big believer in education. I feel like people who have information are able to find ways to change their lives. But we are in a situation where how can you find this information? How do you have access to it? There's homeless people sometimes don't have internet. They don't have a place when they can make a phone call and things like that. I, during this pandemic process, as Mark knows and a lot of people know, have been navigating this system on how to get, COVID relief for your rental housing and for the market. And as an educated woman who's been to graduate school, it's been very difficult for me to navigate that system on my own. And I have spent a lot of time, calling our assembly members in LA and discussing the unemployment issue we had in the beginning of the pandemic. And unfortunately, the response that I got from them was, sorry, we don't have to call unemployment because, we have a job. So I don't know how to help you. And that just infuriated me because I'm like, I pay you to represent me. And how come in a film we have consultants, who talk about reality? How come you in a government office in the middle of a national, tragedy, pandemic, global issue, you're not looking for people who can inform you if you're not the one making those phone calls? And I find myself doing the research of these films, calling these systems and being like, okay, if I am homeless right now, how do I get this? How do I go through this process? What do you need from me? So that I can learn, how does this look in real life and how does this apply, right? Of course, I don't go through the whole process because I don't want to take the time and the resources from people who really need it. But then I connect with people who do this both on the homeless end and on the institutional end to see how this process really goes forward in time. But it just blows my mind that the people who are supposed to help us are really not out there looking for that information on how to do that. So I think information is really also a big issue that we have. And hopefully this film Eviction and the ones we did prior are trying to really bring light to what is out there. Because I am personally so tired of hearing, oh, people want to be homeless. They want to be on the streets. They don't want help. There's plenty of help.
Right.
And as myself, who has been seeking help for this pandemic, the help, which is the number one complaint I have heard from every single previously homeless or homeless person I have interviewed for these films, is that the help that you think it's out there, it's not out there.
Right. And you have a phone, you have internet access, you have the ability to reach out to resources where homeless people just don't have that ability. I put up a video yesterday of a gentleman named Reno, and he talks about how somebody urinated on him and his dog while they were sleeping. And nobody chooses that. But somebody in the comments asked, does he have a job? And Reno is responding to comments on his video, which is something I never thought would happen. It has happened several times, and it's just, to me, it's gorgeous that homeless people are engaging with their story. But somebody commented, does he have a job? And Reno responded, no, I don't have a job, nor do I have a shower, clean clothes, or an address. And then he went on to say, or do I have someone I can trust to watch my dog while I work? And, it's just, we live in this world where people think, the American dream. If you work hard, you're going to better your life. And while there is some truth to that it's never been, the American dream is something that doesn't happen to everybody because we all don't have access. I mean,
Right.
the word is privilege that everybody uses. Somebody said to me access, and I access really helps frame the privilege better, because there are people like Reno who's out on the streets who might not have the ability to charge his phone, might not have the ability to pay for a phone, and just does not have the access to reach out and get support and to better their life as other people do. We don't live in a fair society. And if
Right.
you think that, all they got to do is, make better choices, no. But if you make the choice to help your homeless neighbors, that's the thing. So, like, if you read, there's often an article, Stories Homeless to Harvard. And it's great. That kid, young adult, went from homelessness and is now going to college. They had help along the way. Every person, me included, that got out of homelessness had help along the way. And that's where you come in, because if we can help people, Reno, for example, Reno wants to, he's addicted to drugs. He wants to get sober. But when you're outside and people are pissing on you, it's really hard to stay sober. But if we help Reno get off the streets for a little bit of time, where he starts to heal, where he, the childhood trauma, the layers of childhood trauma start to heal. And then it's possible, because he wants to work, he wants to get sober, he wants to better his life, but we've got to help him to go from streets to the possibility of a better life. It just doesn't happen, streets to employment. That just does not happen. It's not realistic.
And we all struggle with these same issues, right? Like, I have childhood traumas that I'm constantly dealing with, and the whole thing about um, the address, it's such a big problem that I didn't realize was a problem. Shelters are not an address. People cannot use that for employment, for subsidy from the government, for communication with any kind of paper, email, anything. And when you think about it too, to this day, even through unemployment, like, they need to be sending letters to you. And if you don't have an address, like, how do you do that? How do you get your kids to school? I mean, there's so many issues related to just having a physical address that really blow my mind. And people need to realize that too. And I think I agree with you. I mean, I feel like if I was homeless, I probably would be drunk every day. I mean, that is a hard life. That really is a hard life. And I know people who are not, who, to deal with their own issues, drink a lot too. So, when we start to blend these differences between them and us and become we, I think it's really where we find the common ground that we're just all trying. Yeah. If anything, every day of my life, when I think about choices, I wish I've made better choices with people in my life, in my past relationships, and how I grew up, but you can only move forward and learn from the things that you consider mistakes, and then try to do better and be better. Right. And you're right. That comes with access, and that comes with help. I think about the people in my life who are very successful. They all had help from someone. Sure, there's the idea of the meritocracy, of like working hard and the American dream, but even those people had help. Even those people had someone who was like, give this person a chance, and this is what I think you do and Invisible People does for people on the streets, is try to find this chance, this opportunity. How can we help? How can we bridge this gap? What kind of organization can we put them in touch with? What kind of system do we know it's in place that can actually works and actually helps? And that's what we're trying to show with every single one of these films, is like, here is the actual problem. This is what it really is happening on the streets. And here's maybe one solution to it, or here there is no solution to it. Here are all the problems that they face trying to find a solution. And in the case of the first film that I've made, Homeless, where that person dies at the end, I mean, that was a real story from a New York Times article of a man in Chinatown that froze to death. And it took people 3 days to realize he wasn't sleeping. What kind of world do we live in that you see somebody on the street laying down for 3 days? I mean, there are people who lived in the neighborhood, who go to the coffee shop, who walked past that person every day and didn't stop to think, are they okay? In LA, when I walk past anybody laying on the street, that's my my first thought is, are they okay? Should I call someone? And then you start to go into that process of evaluating of like, do they look like they're sleeping? Do I come closer? Do they have anything around them? And, luckily I have seen a lot of people in LA doing that as well. At least by the time that I come around. But that kind of blew my mind, that like somebody would just walk past someone for 3 days and not really
Yeah.
consider that there's something wrong. And that just shows our level of humanity and disconnect, I think, that we're living in these days. And hopefully, like what we're doing here with the organization, with the docs, with the indie films, is really to try to make everything more human. I feel like every day I cry, either is the pandemic or is heartbreak or is now the third world war that's maybe approaching. And I'm like, how can we make people more human? Less afraid, less proudful, less disconnected, including me. I think about that for myself every day too. In what ways am I showing up proudful? Or, I've had a really strange week this week because I have made amends with a few people that I haven't spoken to in 2021. And that kind of just happened randomly. And, I'm someone that if I'm thinking about you, even if we don't talk for some reason, I'm going to be like, hey, I'm thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. And that happened this week. And, then they reached out and saying, can we talk? And the conversation was hard and awkward. And, like, it's like hard conversations are hard. Like,
Yeah.
you
That's
know,
relationships.
yeah. And it's, there are always relationships with your life, with the people in your life, with your work, with your self-worth, with yourself, with everything. Everything is a relationship, and having those little conversations really switched my mindset because one of them, we got into a fight over something so silly, and when her and I stopped to talk about it, and said, this is the thing that I took out of what you said, and I said, well, that wasn't at all what I meant, and if you had brought this up at the time, we could have solved this problem and we wouldn't have not talked for a whole 6 months. So there's all these preconceived notions of where we come from that we apply to people in our lives or that on the streets, that really hinder this sense of like, we're all human. Where can we find the compassion to be there for each other?
Yeah.
Even if it's not physical, even if I don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable approaching a homeless person on the street, what can I do? If they're laying on the ground, can I call someone? Can I
Yeah.
ask somebody who is there, have they seen them before? And there's any number of things that we can do. And during the fundraiser of this film Eviction, what I wrote in my little note, as a director, is that we, I know it's cliche, we are the change that we want to see in the world. But in this case, we really are.
Yeah.
All we have is each other. So I have a choice every day. I can choose to be like, oh, this person made bad choices, is not my problem. Or I can be like, yeah, maybe this person made bad choices. Well, guess what? I did too.
Right.
So, maybe somebody can help me and I can help them and we can all be better somehow. And this whole idea of healing, I think it's so important for yourself and for others. But I've been listening to this book that has been talking about like when you heal yourself, it's not a selfish act. It's really a service. This is really a public service. Because
Yeah.
when you are more healed, you are better at interacting with other people, at understanding where they're coming from. Instead of yelling at someone, maybe you stop and think, okay, what is this person going through? Who has not been on traffic and somebody was like, F you, whatever, and screaming. And like at some point you can match them there because it triggers something in you. Maybe you also had a bad day. Or you can stop and think, wow, this person got to be going through something, if they're sitting in traffic and this is how they choose to react to it. And of course, we're all human and we don't do that on the
Yeah.
spot. It's hard. And, but trying to take that step and think, okay, how can we do better, be better, and hopefully this is what these films are trying to do. And this is definitely what Invisible People is trying to do just for this 2 years that I've known you.
It's not hopefully you're doing it, Luciana. You're doing it.
Thank you. I'm trying. I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are days I feel like I am. There are days that I feel like,
No,
oh man, what else can I be doing?
you're doing it in a very short time. Both of your films on our YouTube will have 1 million viewers. That's something.
Yeah, and the comments is really like you said, where I find my gratitude because, sometimes I cry reading them. And it's just, for me, I'm a very emotive person. And it's hard for me to, like, consistently see so much pain in the world. I come from Brazil, which is a developing, not anymore now, I don't think it's considered a developing nation, but I grew up in Brazil in the 80s when we really didn't even have the internet. We didn't have computers. Like, it was a whole nother world. And now when I go back and I visit and I realize, wow, how is this still happening? When I speak to people here while we're writing these films, I'm like, how in the state of the world we live in, of, modernity, of like luxury, how is this still happening? How is it a 10-year-old being arrested for marijuana possession? How are people still in jail considering, like, marijuana is no longer considered a drug, a felony? So you start to think about, with everything we know, why haven't things been changing quicker? And I think the answer is just us. We have to do it ourselves.
Yep.
And here we are. So I want to wrap up this episode of The Pursuit of Visibility. I mean, it's a lot of really deep conversation we had today, and we appreciate everybody who's listening. But we're still in the process of our fundraiser for the film Eviction. You can find us on GoFundMe. I'll make sure that the link is with the video and with the podcast episode on every platform where it's going to be released. And Mark, if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
I think you've covered it all. I just, one pushback I've gotten from people is, well, if the film is going to, be $20,000, which is the total budget, we're trying to raise 10,000, and then a very generous donor has offered to match, so the total budget will be 20,000. And the one pushback I've gotten is, well, wouldn't that be better if you bought sandwiches or blankets? Well, let's say $20,000 would probably buy 10,000 sandwiches. And you give out 10,000 sandwiches to, let's say, 5,000 homeless people, two each. They're still homeless.
Yeah,
right?
They'll be hungry tomorrow.
Right. And people, there's wonderful organizations that are giving food and giving clothes and giving blankets. It's important. But we need to solve why people are homeless. We need to fix the affordable housing crisis. We need to get people into housing. So if $20,000, and most people are giving $5, $10, $20,000, I mean, $5, $10, $20, most, the investment of, being part of this film is going to have impact that could help tens of thousands of homeless people get out of homelessness, or tens of thousands of families not ending up homelessness. So it is an extremely good investment.
And I'm so grateful, for you and Invisible People and everybody who's donated so far and entrusted us with their $5 and their $10 to tell a story that we hope it will create ripples of change throughout a long time. And that's what we're set out to do. And I do want people to know that, that's the intention. That's the hard work we're doing to tell the story that is, again, with grace and with dignity, because that's what we all deserve, to be seen and to be portrayed as. And I think in the larger society, that's what's missing, this connection between, it's just us. There's no you or them or, and that's where we ended up with these wars and these fights. It's just, at the end of the day, where is the humanity? Where can we meet in a place in the middle? How can we be there for each other in any possible way? So I do feel so honored that people are entrusting us with their $5, because who knows, maybe that's their coffee for the day. Maybe that's their lunch for the day. So it means a lot. And we're thrilled that this is moving forward. And we hope to reach the goal and get this out there so that people can really feel like they're a part of something bigger. We're all part of this one little film that is going to create something bigger, for years to come. So thank you for being here, Mark. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. It's always an honor to hang out with you.
It is always an honor to hang out with you. And, more to come. Stay tuned, everyone.